Hello everyone and welcome, Dom here and welcome to Production Lab. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your first sampled instrument. So I'm going to show you the whole process from scratch and we're going to sample a synth that I have behind me, an analog synth, and we're going to create an instrument out of this synth. Of course, we're going to do all of this in HALion, so there's no other software required. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run HALion 7, and in this case I'm running it standalone because HALion 7 has everything we need to sample and create our instrument in one place. The only thing we need to make sure is that we hit this cogwheel here and we want to make sure that our inputs are set the way we want to. So in my case, I'm going to sample from analog 1 and analog 2 inputs on my audio interface. And I also want to make sure that I have connected my synth via MIDI to my computer. And in this case, my port A is set on all MIDI inputs. So everything that I have connected is going to send MIDI to HALion. Now, once we've done all this, the only thing we have to do is go and select the sample instrument option right here. So I'm going to click on that. And now HALion has configured everything so that we can start creating our first sampled instrument. HALion is actually one of the first software samplers that ever existed. And this is its core functionality. Now that we've created our sample instrument layer, I can go here and as you can see, we already have an instrument zone. Now I'm going to delete that and I'm going to start from scratch. One of the things that many people miss about HALion is that it has a built-in recorder. So you can actually start sampling inside HALion. And this recorder lives right here in this tab. I'm going to click on this. This is where we can start sampling our instrument. I'm going to do a few settings here and then we're going to jump straight into sampling our synthesizer. Now the first thing I want to make sure is that my input source is set to input, and if you remember, we set this to analog 1 and analog 2. This is what I'm going to use to sample my synthesizer, and in this case I'm going to sample an analog Prophet synth. Now the next thing that we can do is we can set the sample mode, and in this case I like to select auto next if I'm planning to sample many different samples. We can also set our input gain. I choose to leave it at 0 and make sure that I do my gain staging on my audio interface. Then we can choose the mapping, and this is where things get very interesting and very simple with HALion when it comes to sampling. What I'm going to choose here is as played, because I'm going to play the actual notes on the synth itself, and then HALion is going to map them to the correct pitch because it knows what notes I played, because I'm going to play the actual MIDI notes on the synth itself. And because the synth transmits MIDI, it's very simple and it can immediately embed this information into the sample. The next thing we need to take care of is the trigger modes. So this determines when the recorder is going to start recording and then when it's going to stop recording. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to select MIDI note on. This means that when I hit a note on the synth, this MIDI note is going to trigger the recorder and it's going to start recording. Now for stopping the recording for each sample, I'm going to select audio threshold instead. I don't want to use MIDI note off because if I do this, if we have a little bit of release in the synth sound, this is going to be cut off. So I don't want this. So I'm going to set the threshold. The default threshold of 50 dBs is fine. And I'm also going to go here to fill gaps and set it to fill centered. Why do I do this? Because I'm not going to sample this synth chromatically. I'm going to sample it in intervals. So I'm going to start with thirds, and then HALion, after we sample, is going to extend the zones so that we don't have missing notes. Now, the great thing is that if you set all these things up once, you can save them as a preset. As you can see here, I have a preset of my own called DOM Synth Sampling. and then you can recall it later on if you want to sample more instruments. The same goes with options, and here is where we can select the channel. I'm going to set it to as source, and in this case it's going to be stereo. The sample rate, I'm going to set it at 48 kilohertz, and here we can set a record folder to store our samples. We can also use a file naming scheme. So for example, if I want to name my samples Prophet 10 Synth, for example, we can see the actual name that is going to be generated right here. So P10 Synth C3 if I play a C3. Bit depth, I'm going to keep it at 24-bit. Format, WAV file, and everything else I'm going to leave as is. And now we're ready to sample. So here we go. Now we're going to sample this analog synth. This is actually a mono synth, so it doesn't have any stereo information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the notes by hand. So I'm going to trigger them like this. And I'm going to let them go on for a while. I'm actually going to use a metronome so I can make sure that they're all the same length. And I'm going to sample in intervals. So C, E, G, B. And then I'm going to start over, spanning across the entire range of this synth. So now if I play a note here, we will see the level in the HALion input meter. So now all I need to do is hit record in the HALion recorder, and we're off to sampling. And as you can see, we can see the waveforms drawing in real time in HALion 7 as we sample. Now let's record the rest of the octaves and we'll jump into HALion and we'll see what we can do there. And now we finished sampling our synth. Let's see what we have here. I'm going to click the Enable MIDI Mapping. And now I can play every one of the samples that we recorded. If you paid attention, I sampled in intervals. So normally we should have just C, E, but we also have D here. And this is because we asked HALion to fill the gaps. Let me show you what HALion has done for us. If we go here to mapping, you will see that, for example, this sample is this zone. The original pitch was C2, but it's actually spread across the keyboard until the next and previous zone. So now we have this instrument spanning across the entire keyboard. So essentially, I have my Prophet patch right here in my computer. Now, if for some reason you don't have the gaps filled already, you can just select all of these and we can right-click, mapping, root key, fill centered. And now we have this same result. So the entire keyboard range is populated. And now the fun begins. Now we can start creating our instrument. Of course, I can play this instrument completely dry as I recorded it. But I can actually enhance this instrument even more by using the HALion engine. So one of the things that I can do is go to my filter section and start adding a filter. I'm going to make sure that I have my layer selected right here. This is very important because you can also do changes on each specific zone. But in this case, I want to affect all the zones. So I'm going to go to my sample instrument layer and I'm going to go to my filter and activate the tube drive. And now we can add a nice filter to this. And this is great. We already have some control over this instrument and this gives us more expression. What I like to do is I like to add a little bit of cutoff velocity. And and this makes the instrument immediately more dynamic. So now if I hit with higher velocities, I'm going to get a brighter sound because the filter opens much more, and if I play lower velocities, we're going to get a darker sound. So immediately we have a very expressive instrument. Now, of course, the Prophet is a monophonic synthesizer, so it's completely mono. There's no stereo information. But now that we've created a sampled instrument of it in HALion, we can turn it into stereo. So let's go to my amplifier zone, and now I'm going to use the alternate pan so that each voice that I play will alternate between the left and right speaker. And just like that, I've added stereo spread to this mono synth. It goes without saying that if you want to have a note last forever, you can introduce looping to each one of these zones. For example, let's take this zone. So let's click this icon here so that we can see the entire sample. And now if I want, I can introduce looping. Now this is something that you might want to do. I chose to record these notes lasting for a while so that I don't have to do looping. But if you want to do looping, you can just go here to your looping and you can choose continuous like this. And now all I need to do is set up my loop points. One thing that I would suggest is that number one, you turn on snap to zero crossing so you don't get clicks. And number two is to click on this edit loop function. And when you go like this, you will see that you can see the actual loop points just like that. So it makes looping so much easier. For example, in this case, I used this loop point. I would suggest that you spend a little bit of time to find the perfect loop point, but if you find that you can't really find a loop selection that will give you no clicks, don't worry about it too much because you can use the loop crossfade here. So if I do this, you will see that I can smoothen out this loop point. And now this is seamless. You can't hear the looping going on. So what we've done up to this point, we've created this dynamic sound. The other thing that I can do is I can change the sound completely. I can say I want to go to my envelope section and I want to go to my filter here, and maybe I want to have a different envelope for my filter. Now, of course, in order for this to happen, we need to make sure that in our filter section, we turn down the cutoff a little bit. And we also add a little bit of amount to our filter envelope. The other thing that we can do if we want to make the sound a little bit bigger and more three-dimensional is we can go to our voice control section right here and we can activate unison. So in this case, I can multiply the number of voices per note. So let's go for 4 in this case. And I can start detuning them, panning them, and delaying them. Let's pan them and detune them. And already we have a playable instrument, but let me show you a few last things that you can do that are loads of fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to my flex phraser, and here I can go to my MIDI mod tab. This is where we can start adding arpeggiators and phrases to this instrument that we just created. What I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the flex phraser and I'm going to go for the classic arp and I'm going to choose the alternate 1. And now I'm going to play a little bit with the filters, the filter envelopes, and I'm going to add some effects as well. And let's add some effects. I'm going to go to my mixer here. I'm going to go to my slots. This is my synth. And I'm going to add a delay and a reverb. And now let's go and play. And of course, after this, sky's the limit. You can create endless variations with this instrument that we just created. Once you do all this, the only thing you have to do is you can go here, you can right click on your slot track and export the program. Now in this case, all I need to do is select my preset name, and I can also export the audio files and everything that's required for this instrument to run. So this is how you can create your first sampled instrument in HALion. It's actually a lot of fun and very easy to do. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and if you want to see more of these kinds of videos, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. So, I hope you enjoy creating your own unique instruments in HALion 7. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.